Hello, I'm Brian from rougeone, and I'm here to talk about modernizing the Rouge. Before we talk about modernizing the Rouge, we should ask, why do we even want to keep the Rouge at all? Well, it's a unique part of Canadian football. It creates more scoring scenarios, so a variety of scorelines add excitement and strategy to the game. It elevates special teams, encouraging returns, so kick coverage teams are more important. And most importantly, it's because touchbacks are boring. Don't really need fair catches or touchbacks in the game if we can help it. So why would we want to modernize the Rouge? Well, first off, it's being seen as a point for failure. We'll get into how this narrative came to be in later slides. Also, we want to avoid a scenario where Grey Cup is won off a missed field goal that just sails right through the end zone. I think most fans of the Rouge will admit this is not the ideal scenario, but most would rather keep the Rouge and risk having it happen than lose the Rouge completely. I think there's another solution here, though. So let's talk about why Rouge is seen as a point for failure. There's two common scenarios of a Rouge being scored. One is a kicker misses a makeable field goal, so obviously a failure. And the other is a punter trying to pin a team deep, but accidentally having it roll into the end zone. Receiving team happily takes a knee and gains their field position. So right now, teams are almost never purposely trying for a Rouge. It's only when they fail to do something that they score one. However, this wasn't always the case. At one time, a punter with a whole lot of singles, you'd look at that and say, wow, they must have a strong leg, rather than, wow, they must be really inaccurate. But in the modern game, the field position trade-off is not worth the point. You're giving up 30 to 40 yards of field position by scoring that Rouge, so no team is purposely trying to do that. However, that trade-off in field position isn't set in stone. We can just make a rule change here. Something similar did happen when we were seeing teams conceding safeties all the time. Back then, the kickoff point was further up, so you concede a safety kickoff from about the 30-yard line, 35-yard line, and gain a whole bunch of field position. CFL didn't want to see people running back and taking a knee all the time, so they made a change. The kickoff's now from the 20-yard line, and teams usually will punt the ball instead of taking a knee in the end zone. So it's just a better play for fans all around. So that brings us to our first rule change. If a kickball is playable, a team conceding a Rouge scrimmages at the 20-yard line, or we'll say 15-yard line if we're talking about a 100-yard field. And we'll define playable as landing in the field of play or touching a player who's in the field of play. So we're purposely not using the CFL's definition of playable that they have in the new Rouge rule. So what does this do? This means teams are less likely to concede the Rouge, meaning we'll see returns instead of kneel downs. And if you were to combine this with the rule in amateur football where a team automatically gains the 20-yard line if they get the ball out of the end zone, you'd see a return on pretty much every kick into the end zone. So that is something we could consider with this new rule. If you applied that at the pro level, pretty much every kick would be returned, and the goal line becomes that focal point for a scoring play or not scoring play. Just like safeties, touchdowns, that's where the action is, and that's where you want to get across that line. So that brings us to the second rule change. Don't allow any punts out of bounds. So in the CFL, we've already banned most punts out of bounds unless the ball is inside the 15-yard line. We're going to change that so we don't have any more unreturnable corner kickoff punts. They just go out of bounds in the air, no return, no excitement. Let's get rid of that play. You may ask why we want to get rid of that play. Why get rid of all punts out of bounds? Well, let's take a look at the possible outcomes when a team tries a corner coffin punt. So the first outcome is success. The ball flies out of bounds somewhere between 15-yard line and the goal line, with the ball path being shown in green on the right. And on the right now, that's where the ball is landing, and you can see no returns possible. Ball's out of bounds. Team succeeded, but not a very exciting play for the fans. And the second outcome, punt goes out of bounds and comes up short of the 15-yard line. This is a failure by the team, kind of a boring outcome that leads to a penalty and a feeling of a sloppier game. And the third outcome, ball either flies through the end zone or rolls into the end zone and stays there, in which case the returner is probably going to take a knee. We get no return, a rouge is scored, and this is that point for failure scenario we were talking about earlier. And returners would be encouraged to just watch the ball roll in or roll through the end zone, and if it stays there, to take a knee and gain the field position. And then there's the fourth outcome, where ball comes up short of the end zone and short of the sideline. It's not what a team's trying to do. This is a failure to execute, but the outcomes are much more varied. Punt can land in bounds and then bounce out of bounds at the 1, and they still get their corner coffin punt that they were aiming for, or they can hem in the returner and get good field position that way. But there's also the other possibilities of a long return, which could go for a touchdown, or anything else that can happen on a normal football play, fumbles, penalties, anything that can happen on any punt anywhere else in the field. So even though this is a failure for the punt team, it's actually the best outcome for the fans because it's providing those same outcomes that happen on a punt anywhere else in the field. And this is, the reason we banned punts from going out of bounds everywhere else in the field is because we wanted these returns and we wanted these exciting plays. So if you take the impacts of the first two rules, this is what it looks like as far as where teams are trying to aim the ball into the corner like they do anywhere else on the field, and where they really don't want to go, which is marked in red, which is out of bounds. So these rules together mean punts are going to be returnable. Returners aren't just going to watch the ball roll or kneel down when they take the ball. So, we will get an exciting football play instead of a boring play. And we will not get any touchbacks. So now I'm going to look at the other problem with the rouge that we identified, which is, kicks sailing through the end zone could win a game for our team. Some people like that, but most people don't seem to. Simplest way to deal with that would be to say you don't get a rouge if the ball goes out of bounds. Problems with that is it's a little bit strange to punish a team for getting too close to the end zone and say no rouge for you. And also, it's bringing touchbacks into the game, and touchbacks are boring. We don't need touchbacks, so there's a better way. That brings us to the third rule change. If a kickball passes through goal and is not returnable, the receiving team has two choices. Concede a point and scrimmage at the 40, which is just the existing rouge rule. Or don't concede a point and scrimmage at the 5-yard line. Now I'm going to use the 5-yard line to illustrate the point of the rule, but you could just as well make it the 10-yard line and it would be a similar thing. With this rule change, the rouge would basically operate the same way it does today for most of the game. The team's going to take their good field position and concede the point. Because we've added the option to not give up the point and just take poor field position, a late game or overtime kick that just sails right through the end zone won't decide the outcome of the game. So these rule changes will ensure that kicks are returnable, because nobody's purposely going to try for the rouge by putting the ball through the end zone. It also preserves that unique kick-in, kick-out scenario that can happen at the end of a Canadian Football League game. It's quite rare, but it is nice that it can happen once in a while. So those are the three rule changes I'm proposing. Up until this point, I've discussed how they would improve the game in a way that would apply just as well to the current rules or the new CFL rules. Now I'm going to look at a scenario where it's really the new rules we're looking at, and a scenario that these new rules have created, and that's these missed field goal returns. By moving the goalposts, it means there's only a possibility of a missed field goal return on kicks that are short of the crossbar. That'll mean missed field goal opportunities will go from something that happens almost weekly in the CFL to something that's quite rare. And apart from keeping the goalposts on the goal line, there's really nothing that can change this. To compound the problem, the new Rouge rule will treat any ball that rolls out of bounds as a touchback. Most kicks will have enough momentum to roll right through the end zone. So now we're not just limiting the returns to short kicks, but we're pretty much taking away any incentive to return the few that do fall short. We can see return scenario is becoming so rare that teams don't bother to put a returner back there at all, and instead just add another person in to try and block the field goal. And if teams don't have a returner back there, missed field goal returns end up being quite rare, which would mean missed field goal touchdowns will barely happen at all. They might become pretty much non-existent. So how does the Modernized Rouge help with this scenario? Well, it ensures that there will be a return on any missed field goal that is actually returnable rather than on just some of them. So even though we'll have seen reduction in the missed field goal return touchdowns, they'd still be a rare treat in the game rather than being taken out completely. The Modernized Rouge will also mean there's more punts put into play deep in the opponent's end. So it could be, instead of losing a bunch of exciting return touchdowns entirely, we're just shifting where they happen from missed field goal returns to long punt returns. So in conclusion, the Modernized Rouge will get rid of nothing plays like touchbacks, kneel downs, and punts out of bounds and replace them with a real football play. And it'll assure that special teams remain that third phase of Canadian football that truly is 1/3 of the game. All right, that's all I had. Thank you for watching. Remember to share the hashtag #rougeone and spread the word. Thank you.